Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.
The higher number of migrants coming to the U.S.-Mexico border caused a tense exchange between reporters and the White House press secretary. She strained to avoid answering pointed questions on immigration. NTD's Christina Kim has more.
More and more unaccompanied minors are trying to cross the border these days. Migration at the southern border is seeing a sharp rise overall. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the administration is making an effort to convey to them, quote, "This is not the time to come, that the majority of the people who come to the border will be turned away." But she slipped away from answering any direct questions about whether or not there's an immigration crisis.
Look, I don't think we need to sit here and put new labels on what we have already conveyed is challenging. What we have conveyed is a top priority for the president, what our policy teams are working on every single day.
Psaki also dodged a question about whether the number of migrant children has tripled.
Why won't you confirm that number? That's a very important number.
We've been very clear that there is an increase, that there are more children coming across the border than we have facilities for at this point in time.
Psaki directed the reporter to ask the Department of Homeland Security for those figures, but the reporter said the DHS would not confirm the number.
I would encourage you to go back to them and ask them again. We're not going to confirm them from the White House. It's not our program.
Psaki said the administration encourages transparency, but she said what's really important is the root cause of the problems and the policies to address them. She also said reporters and cameras will be let into the migrant facilities, but she didn't say when. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Experts say President Biden's policies are enriching Mexican cartels as immigration surges. This as Biden refuses to answer questions about the escalating crisis on the southern U.S. border.
Crisis at the border, sir.
Law enforcement officials say profits from human smuggling are booming because of Biden's immigration policies. Teresa Cardno-Brown directs an immigration policy group in Washington. She says migrants have to pay off the cartels as they pass through their territory. It can cost thousands of dollars per person to make the full journey, and all of that money flows to the criminals. Law enforcement recently discovered that cartels are using colored wristbands to track who has paid. Brown says the cartels find more efficient ways to operate, just like a business. Members of both parties say Biden's policies put migrants at risk by exposing them to the cartels. Texas Representative Vicente Gonzalez is a Democrat representing a border region. He says migrants are being terrorized along the trek to the U.S.
I think this policy forces them to make a 2,000-mile walk. That is very dangerous, and they're getting raped and pillaged along the way. And I think we need to come up with more common-sense solutions.
And doing so,
Republican Representative Chip Roy tells the Epoch Times that Biden claims his policies are compassionate to migrants, but the results are just the opposite.
while the president is sitting in the White House in Washington, there are immigrants in stash houses being abused. There are immigrants being abused on the journey. There are cartels that are using these people for profit. That is happening right now.
Roy says a secure border is safer for immigrants. That's because cartels operate human smuggling alongside other criminal activities.
That's all integrated in then what turns into human trafficking, sex trafficking, basically slavery, modern day slavery in the United States, where people are being forced to work against their will or being forced to be in sex trade against their will.
Jason Jones is a former captain for the Texas Department of Public Safety. He tells the Epoch Times that Biden's policies are a game changer for cartels and that they're out of control. Jones says the immigration crisis at the border makes life easier for the drug smugglers and predicts that the next crisis will be skyrocketing rates of U.S. drug overdoses later this year.
A breach of privacy taken to the next level. A group of hackers say they got access to over 100,000 security cameras across the country. An international group of hackers is claiming credit for gaining access to live feeds of 150,000 surveillance cameras across the U.S. and the world. These cameras are in jails, hospitals, schools, and companies, and they all come from a Silicon Valley-based security system supplier called Verkada. Car maker Tesla and software company Cloudflare also had their security cameras breached. A video seen by Bloomberg is believed to show a Tesla warehouse in Shanghai, China. Other videos seen by Bloomberg reportedly show the inside of women's clinics and psychiatric hospitals, and the hackers claim they gained access to over 300 cameras inside a jail in Alabama. Reportedly, the hackers say they lost access to the video feeds and archives after Bloomberg contacted Verkada. One of the hackers from the group claimed credit for breaching Verkada's system, saying the group did it because they wanted to show the pervasiveness of surveillance cameras and how easy it is to break into the system. That hacker also said it was too much fun not to do it. The group also claimed credit in the past for hacking chipmaker Intel and carmaker Nissan. Many of Verkada's surveillance cameras have facial recognition technology. That means customers can search and filter results based on a person's face. A representative for Verkada says it is investigating the scale and scope of the potential issue. The UK government unveils new laws, including up to 10 years in jail for criminally damaging memorials. It comes after people defaced Sir Winston Churchill's statue in protests last year. Here's NTD's Jane Worrell with the story.
Vandals face up to 10 years in prison for criminally damaging memorials. The current maximum penalty is 3 months. A massive chunk of new crime legislation includes a new law that increases the penalties for people damaging statues and memorials. It follows the toppling of statues last year linked to the slave trade. Activists threw English merchant and philanthropist Edward Colston's statue into the river at a Black Lives Matter march. And the word racist was sprayed on Sir Winston Churchill's statue at an Extinction Rebellion demonstration. A former police chief tells us he welcomes the new, tougher rules.
Well, I'm somewhat biased because I'm the fourth generation soldier in my family, as well as my brother. So, of course, these war memorials are something I always bow my head when I pass, and that's the respect I hold them in. So, and it's good to see the government actually acting rather than talking about it.
Police will also be allowed to restrict protests that disrupt transport links or access to Parliament. Human rights group Liberty says giving more power to police to clamp down on protests risks making it harder to hold the powerful to account. The new plans outline longer sentences for a range of crimes, with life sentences for children who commit murder, killer drivers and terrorists. This massive piece of legislation gives more powers to police to stop and search, to clamp down on knife crime. It also widens the law that prevents adults in a position of trust from abusing children. Jane Worrell, NTD News, London.
An NGO director in the UK says there's a growing push to scrutinize Chinese state-run broadcaster CGTN more closely. This comes after recent decisions by TV regulators in the UK and France. NTD's Joy Dogood has more.
UK broadcast regulator Ofcom on Monday imposed fines on Chinese state-run news channel CGTN, £125,000 for its partial coverage of Hong Kong protests, and a £100,000 fine for airing a false confession of British national Peter Humphrey. Humphrey has mixed feelings about the rulings.
I'm very pleased to see all of these disciplinary legal rulings against CGTN. I'm disappointed that the fines are so small.
He says fines should be in the millions, since it involves severe and brutal human rights crimes.
£100,000 fine something like CGTN is just like spitting in the wind, because CGTN is funded by the very deep and very dirty and very bloody pockets of the Chinese Communist Party.
Last week, a French regulator approved CGTN's licence to broadcast in France and by extension in Europe. This comes after Ofcom revoked its UK licence in February, following complaints filed by human rights NGO Safeguard Defenders. Its director says he's not concerned about the French decision.
The CSA, as they are called, made it very clear, and this is incredibly unusual, that they will be paying close attention to CGTN and what they broadcast. So I think it's actually a positive development because it puts more pressure on CGTN.
He says it has always been their goal to get TV regulators to better scrutinise Chinese state-owned broadcasters. Peter Darlin is also a victim of a false confession that was broadcast on Chinese state TV. He says he sees a growing push against Chinese Communist Party, or CCP media. And not just in Europe. An Australian broadcaster recently suspended CGTN after receiving a letter from Safeguard Defenders. He says regulations cannot properly deal with the current media landscape anymore.
It's a patchwork, really, and there's a lot of ways around these regulations. So for sure, I mean, we're getting to the point where we need a reckoning with a more comprehensive overview of how do we combat disinformation, direct lies, biases.
He says Safeguard Defenders has some quite exciting developments in the pipeline. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.